is relevant to the human experience. And this is my as me as a reader, and obviously other people have their own experiences of it. So I judge them as not useful to me. They entertain me, or they comforted. They provided a certain level of comfort to me as a child because they took me out of my own life. But then at a certain point, I suddenly realized, oh, this is not real life in any sense. Like, these are not human beings, and the real problems are not being discussed. And then I thought, why am I wasting my time with this stuff? I could be watching Friends, It's the same level of meaninglessness. That was my experience, but everybody has their own experience.
And the second question. Yes, ma'am, you. Anyone can go for it.
Okay. Actually, I have two things. One is a question, one is more of a comment. First, my comment is to you, Suvikas. Actually, the thing you spoke about history and how our children today don't know so much about that's happened in India.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you spoke about how, like, for example, you spoke about 1984 and how the youth today don't know about it. Now, I myself am a teacher, and it's really amazing to me that in our history textbooks, we don't do anything after 1950. After that we move over to world history, and then and even that ends closely to after the UN. Nothing more than that. So our children today don't know about 1984, they don't know about 1992, they don't know about Godra rice, they don't know about something, Dharmada, they don't know about anything. So that's something that I have trouble with as well. And it's great that people are writing about it in the mainstream, though as a teacher, I don't have much power changing that.
No, thanks, sir. But I think just for your information, the Ministry of Human Resource Development has is a file in motion right now. It started in 1948, just after it reached 1951 very soon.
The second thing that I wanted to speak about was the writer's block that you were talking about. In November, there was this motion which said, try to write a novel in 1 month. And it was just like a fun thing. And they said, just 1,700 words in a day, and you'll be, So it was very exciting, and my friends and I signed up, not signed up really. We just started opened our own laptops and started writing. And it took me really long, because right from the beginning, I felt like my character wasn't doing what I wanted her to do. And she just, I had to keep changing my character so that she could do what she wanted to do. So, did you, since you wrote a book so shortly?
Pardon me for asking, but are you married? Once you get married, then you get used to not being able to get married. You'll be fine.
Well, I was just asking, since you wrote a book in 2 months, did you ever have that problem where, you weren't able to do because it didn't seem real, or it didn't seem believable?
Look, I think when you write, there are two ways of writing. One is you write plot-driven, narratives, and the other is you write character-driven narratives. When your narrative is mainly character-driven, then this is a problem that can come up very, very frequently, where the character refuses to do the bidding that you are doing. But when you are writing a very heavy plot-driven narrative, and Q&A has been described as a high-concept plot-driven narrative, then I think the problem is less acute, because the plot is supreme, and the plot has to move according to, you are the puppet master, and you have sort of created the scaffolding. Now, on the surface, the plot of Q&A looks very simple. There's a person who appears in a quiz show, and he answers 12 questions, and he wins the top prize, and then he's arrested because they feel, how can this young dweller, know all the answers? The tough part was, when, I'm revealing the private life of my protagonist through the public spectacle of a quiz show, I have to follow the conventions of a quiz show also. Easy questions come first, difficult questions come later. You cannot have 2 questions on history at the same time. You have to change it around. So for me, that was the more complex part, that how do I build the scaffolding of this narrative where I am following the conventions of a quiz show, and yet I am telling a thrilling story also, which is credible. which does not strain credibility that, how could this guy do this and that. So that for me was the more difficult part, which I wrestled with. But ultimately, the most complex part was the voice. For me, that is the most important thing. How do you get the voice of this 18-year-old waiter, which you are not? How do you get that voice? I wrestled with it. I tried several different tactics and openings. It was not working. Till one day, I don't know how out of the blue, these two sentences popped into my head. I have been arrested, full stop, for wearing a question. Once that happened, I said, that is the voice of Ram Mohan Thomas. And that's when the novel flew in just 2 months.
I hope that answers everything. Thank you. The next question now.
I wrote my non-fiction within 2 months. That was in 2011. And now I'm stuck with my second book where only 20% work is pending and I'm not able to complete any tips.
So massive writer's block. Look, I don't know, Sean, you want to or very good question.
I think, ma'am, what happens is that I find that writer's block is never a problem if you lower quality standards enough. It keeps flowing, and you find that you're writing more and more and more. And what you need to do is get a very good editor. You need to put the ball. Like I was with David, and I was very lucky. So I never had writer's block, and I got lots of ideas. I'm not saying any of them were good ideas, but there were a lot of them. And then I'd give them to David, and he'd go, no, that's no, okay. And that's how we sort of. So you could think it depends on your editor, how much will he put up with. In my case, David was a saint, so I was lucky.
A quick comment. I think this what Akhil was talking about too was important about just showing up. That a lot of people say that just sit down anyway. Even if you be prepared to not write anything, but just sit down, sit in front of your computer or your notebook, and there are many techniques. We could talk about that, but there are many techniques like time yourself and don't lift the pen from your page. Just keep writing for 2 pages, whatever comes into your head, and just go on and on and on. And I found that it really works for me because there's some thread that snaps all of a sudden, and I'm able to go ahead. So there are many techniques like that. There are lots of books written on that subject as well, because apparently writer's block is a huge thing. So I'm sure they'll be willing to talk about it.
I have a question for Mr. Sharma. You mentioned that as a child you were very lonely and sad. So did you find later in life writing was a cathartic process for you?
I mean, it was. Almost immediately once I began to think of myself as a writer and to think of myself as belonging to a community of writers, and writers who are both alive and dead. That I'm a part of this history. And so for me, that in itself was very comforting. So I found it very helpful. But catharsis is, I'm not sure if I agree with the term of catharsis, the idea that I'm sort of working through my problems by writing these things. Instead, it's oftentimes the solution to our problems are completely, I'll tell you a story. I was very unhappy one day. This is about a year or so ago. And it was a Monday morning, and I was going down the elevator, and in the elevator was this woman, and I asked her, "So how are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, not well." And I think, "Oh man, now I have to ask her why." and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on?" And she said, "My son, he's 14, and he's a paranoid schizophrenic. He's in the hospital. He thinks that the tax authorities are after him." And my response was not compassion. It was instead thinking, I spent much of my youth in hospitals. And so I said to her, "Oh, I know how hard it is to be in a hospital alone. Like how lonely you get. Do you want me to come along with you?" And I was hoping, "Please say no. Please say no." And she said, "Yes, thank you." And I would say I immediately felt so relieved, because once you stop thinking about yourself, you suddenly realize you're already okay. It isn't as if that writing makes me okay. What makes me okay is caring about other people. When I care about other people, then I realize, I'm fine. I have my problems, but everybody has their problems. So that's why I question the word catharsis.
From the point of view of a complete amateur and someone who's just grown up in a middle class Bombay home and got the conventional stuff, school, college, work, and if they want to write, is it okay not to write on? I mean, I'm talking from a point of view of social and economic related writing. If you write and you just put a piece of life on paper, would it be saleable? Would people want to read it? And it doesn't have anything to do with changing society or anything huge. What I'm trying to say is something that's just ordinary, mediocre, dealing with the thoughts of a human being or a person. Is it okay to write just ordinary
Who's
stuff?
the question for? Is there anyone specific or three of them?
There are two parts to the question. One is simply, can I write about ordinary human beings living their ordinary life, and will that be of sufficient interest for people to be willing to publish it? Right? I mean, that's the question. That's one part of the question. And it's true. I mean, obviously they will, because the world is full of books about ordinary human beings living their lives. But fiction is not me putting my life down. That might be a little bit closer to diary. Fiction is all these devices that are created to generate interest in the reader. You have to remember that, like whatever my wife does, or my mother does, or my father does, I find fascinating. I just am just incredibly curious as to what weirdness they're up to now. But other people would not be as fascinated with my father's, how he keeps all these old newspapers. Other people don't care. And so there are all these technical things that you have to have some control over before I think it's likely to be published.
Good morning, my name is Feroza Printer and I'm a writer and an editor with this site.
We're wondering where's the voice coming from.
I'm a writer and an editor,
okay.
and this question is for Vikas Saru. Last year I got the entire manuscript of somebody wanting me to do the final proof, which I've never ever done because I was scared it was going to go into printing. And he was a banker for a multinational. I met him at a coffee shop and I got the 7,000 page manuscript or whatever. And I read it, and it was beautifully written, a lot of research from the time of Buddha and everything. And it took me 3 days to read, and
7,000 words, 7,000
it was a
pages
real,
in 3 days.
yeah, I had to sit and do it because it was going to the printer, and my friend who's a blogger said just do it for him. And I was trying to read it, and it was really beautiful written. But where the sexual parts were, the romance was, where the emotion was, it was blank, fig leaf, blank. And I didn't know this guy, and I'm born and raised in Bombay, and this guy is from Delhi and he's a banker. And I just kept thinking to myself, this guy's parents are damn strict, this guy's parents are damn strict. Like, he's not writing the crucial part. And when you are a writer and you're a reader, you know when the writer is lying. You know when he's covering up. And you have to be totally naked when you're sitting there with paper and pen. So finally I kept the manuscript at home and I went to meet him about the price and the charge I was going to charge him. And I just asked him, I said, I didn't know how to put it, because it was his work and it was going to be out. So I asked him, I said, why are you so closed in some places? So he says, he was a very big banker. It's a very big bank. It's multinational. And before he could write, he has to take an undertaking with his branch in Bangalore. And the bank in Bangalore sends it to Hong Kong. And they approve, and he has to give the little bit of the architecture, and each stage he has to tell them what he's doing. And I didn't do it. The book was out. It was flat. It didn't do well. He got a thing, and it was self-published or whatever. So I'm asking you, Mr. Saru, as you're such a big, compared to him, you're this big diplomat for India, you know, the 3 elephants, the lions, or the monkeys. So how many undertakings do you have to go through? Because when you write a book, one day your book is going to come out about sex and human relationships. Will you also have to write?
I'll tell you something very interesting, and many people are not aware of this. The civil service rules say that if you are writing a book which is purely of literary, artistic, scientific or sports-related subject, you do not need government's permission to publish. You don't have to show the book at all. As long as you just give a certificate. So when I write a book, I just give a certificate to my administration division that I have written a book. It's been published by Random House or Simon & Schuster or whatever. And it's a literary book. And that's it. Period. Oh, I need government's permission not to publish the book, only to accept royalties. Because government is already giving me a salary. So I must say that our civil service rules are very, very liberal in that sense. The people who framed it accepted the fact that there has to be artistic integrity. You know that when you're writing a novel, you're not writing a tourist brochure on India. And you should have the freedom. Of course, if you're writing a novel which impinges on your professional work, if you're writing a novel, I posted in Pakistan and I'm writing a novel about Pakistan, or I'm writing a novel about foreign leaders, then you have to show it to the government, and the government has the right to say that whether it's fit for publication or not. But if you're not writing, my authorization letter that came to me said, please confirm that your book does not have anything to do with foreign policy. And I said, it has nothing to do with foreign policy. And that was, so that way I must say, we are very liberal. An American diplomat told me, an Irish diplomat told me, he says, in our government we would never have permission to write the kind of novel that we do. So that way I must say that our founding fathers, the people who devised the civil service code, were very liberal compared to this banker levels. Well, you can write a book, why not? Why can't you write a book? As I said, look, it does not matter where you set the book. The thing is, I think you as a writer have to, know whether you are treading on any political toes or any foreign policy toes. I think that is, I think you have to work it out yourself. If you publish a book which talks about the president of Turkey having a girlfriend or something like that, and it gets published and the Turkish ambassador protests, well, then you oppose this book, because then you should have sort of taken approval. So the best thing is you set a book in a fictional country called Bloc. I was talking about a fictional land called Bloc.